Solomon Carter, 74, stood outside a Chicago blues bar, cane glinting under South Loop streetlights. Pride swelled for his granddaughter Lila's performance. Suddenly, officers Brent Voss and Kyle Drennan stormed up, snarling, "Loiterer!" Battens cracked his cane away, splitting his lip. Blood stained his wool coat as cuffs bit his wrists. Tossed in their squad car, Solomon dialed a number, voice calm. The Supreme Court answered. Their laughter died. Who had this old black man just unleashed? Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from, and if you stand for justice, hit like and subscribe, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. What power lies behind Solomon's call? Solomon Carter sat on a chipped wooden bench in a Chicago precinct, wrists throbbing where cuffs had pinched too tight, blood crusted on his chin, a sharp sting pulsing from his split lip, staining the collar of his wool coat. The air reeked of stale coffee and disinfectant, buzzing with the clatter of keyboards and the low growl of officers trading insults. His 74-year-old frame ached, each bruise a reminder of officers Brent Voss and Kyle Drennan's batons outside the South Loop Blues Bar. They'd called him Loiterer, a slur-laced jab at his black skin in a wealthy district, before cracking his cane away and slamming him into their squad car. Now, locked in this grimy cage, he waited, eyes scanning the room, sharp despite the pain. His call to Justice Clara Hensley, a Supreme Court ally from decades past, lingered in his mind. He'd kept his voice steady, but the cops' laughter had choked when her name hit their ears. They'd underestimated him, thought him just an old man with no pull. They were wrong. The precinct's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting jagged shadows across the concrete floor. Solomon's silver hair caught a flicker of the glow, his tailored suit now crumpled, a single button dangling loose. He shifted, wincing as his ribs protested, but his posture stayed upright, forged from years on the federal bench staring down liars and bigots. Across the room, a desk sergeant, beefy with a sweat-stained collar, barked into a phone, tossing a glance at Solomon like he was trash. Voss lounged nearby, his wiry frame slouched against a vending machine, hazel eyes glinting with smug satisfaction. Drennan, broader, his buzz cut gleaming under the lights, flipped through a report, chuckling softly. They thought they'd won, thought a black elder in cuffs was the end of it. Solomon's fingers twitched, itching for his cane now bagged as evidence in some locker. He memorized their badge numbers. Voss, 3824, Drennan, 4917, details that would matter later. A commotion erupted at the front desk, shattering the precinct's hum. Lila Carter, 22, stormed through the double doors, her braided hair swinging, eyes blazing with fury. Her leather jacket hugged her slim frame, and her phone was already up, camera rolling, capturing the chaos. "Where's my grandfather?" she demanded, voice cutting like a blade through the murmurs. Solomon's chest warmed, pride battling the ache in his bones. Lila, his singer granddaughter, had been mid-performance at the blues bar when a friend texted her about his arrest. Now here she was, fearless, her boots stomping the linoleum as she faced the sergeant. "So I've got no right to hold him," she snapped, panning her phone to catch the man's scowl, the precinct's peeling walls, the officer's sneers. "He was just standing there, and you know it." The sergeant, his jowls quivering, leaned. Over the counter, voice thick with condescension. "Back off, girl, or you'll join him." Lila didn't flinch, her thumb hitting record harder, streaming to her thousands of followers on X. "Go ahead, say that again," she dared, her Chicago accent sharp. "Let the world hear how you treat a 74-year-old man for existing." Solomon's lips twitched, a faint smile breaking through his pain. She had his fire, that unyielding spark he'd nurtured since she was a kid, humming hymns at his knee. He shifted on the bench, catching Voss's eye. The cop's smirk faded, replaced by a flicker of unease as Lila's voice echoed, drawing stares from other officers. A phone rang behind the sergeant's desk, shrill and insistent. He grabbed it, muttering, then froze, his face paling as a voice crackled through. Solomon knew that tone. Clara Hensley didn't negotiate. She'd been his sparring partner in law school, a black woman who'd climbed to the Supreme Court through grit and genius, and she didn't take kindly to old friends being beaten for sport. The sergeant slammed the receiver down, cursing under his breath, and barked at Voss. "Get the old man out, bail's set, courtesy of some DC hotshot." Voss stiffened, his jaw tightening, but he stalked over, yanking Solomon to his feet with a rough grip. "Lucky break, Pops," he muttered, unlocking the cuffs with a deliberate twist that scraped skin. Drennan tossed Solomon's coat at him, bloodstains and all, his grin cold. "Don't get comfy." Solomon stood slow and deliberate, ignoring the fire in his wrists. He smoothed his coat, reclaiming dignity with each measured step, and met Lila's eyes across the room. She lowered her phone, relief flooding her face, but her jaw stayed tight, ready for war. He limped toward her, leaning on her arm as they pushed through the precinct doors into the biting Chicago night. The South Loop's neon signs flickered, taxis honking past glass-fronted shops. Solomon inhaled, the cold air sharp against his bruised ribs, and felt a flicker of triumph. Clara's call had sprung him a crack in the system's armor. He'd stood outside that bar, proud and harmless, and they'd tried to break him for it. They failed. He squeezed Lila's hand, whispering, "We're not done." She nodded, her grip fierce, and for a moment he believed they'd won, that justice was stirring, that he could go home and heal. Home was his Hyde Park apartment, a modest brick unit stacked with law books and memories of his late wife, Esther. Solomon sank into his armchair, Lila brewing tea in the cramped kitchen, her phone buzzing with notifications. He thought of calling Clara to thank her, but exhaustion pulled at him, his eyelids heavy. Lila set a mug down, steam curling, and sat across from him scrolling X. "They're with us, Grandpa," she said, showing him posts praising his release, condemning the cops. "We'll make them pay." Solomon nodded, hope flickering. He'd faced their batons, their cuffs, and walked out. The fight was just beginning, but he was free, Lila was safe, and Clara's voice echoed in his mind, a promise of more to come. He closed his eyes, letting the moment settle, believing the worst was behind him. Sleep didn't last. At 3 and say. The morning Lila's phone pinged, a harsh chime that jolted Solomon awake. She frowned, tapping the screen, then gasped, shoving it toward him. A headline from Windy Truth, a local news site with a tabloid's bite, screamed across the display. "Violent drifter attacks cops in South Loop." Solomon's face stared back, grainy footage showing him swinging his cane at Voss and Drennan, their batons nowhere in sight. The story claimed he'd lunged first, a vagrant in a stolen suit, drunk and dangerous, assaulting officers protecting Chicago's elite. Comments flooded X, hashtags like "one-armed South Loop thug" trending, thousands spitting venom. "Lock him up." Typical. Solomon's gut twisted, blood pounding in his ears. The footage was doctored, his defensive stumble edited into aggression, his cane a weapon, his blackness a crime. Lila scrolled, her fingers trembling. "This is a lie," she hissed, pulling up her own video from the bar, the one showing Voss's baton cracking Solomon's lip, Drennan's kick to his knee. But Windy Truth's reach was wider, its story stickier, shared by bots and bigots alike. Solomon's chest burned, not from bruises, but from the sheer audacity. He'd walked out, thinking Clara's call had saved him, that his name, 3 decades a federal judge untarnished, meant something. Now it was mud, his legacy twisted into a caricature to shield 2 racist cops. He stood, ignoring the ache in his leg, and paced the apartment's worn rug, law books looming like silent witnesses. "They're hitting back," he said, voice low, a vow forming. "Harder than I thought." He replayed the precinct in his mind, Voss's smirk, Drennan's chuckle, the sergeant's sneer. They'd taken his release as a slap, a black man slipping their grip, and this was their counterpunch. Windy Truth wasn't random. Solomon had seen its bylines before, cozy with police unions, quick to paint black victims as thugs. Voss and Drennan had fed them the footage, he was sure, doctored by some precinct tech with a grudge. The lie wasn't just about him. It was a warning to every black person daring to fight back, a billboard screaming, "Know your place." Solomon stopped pacing, meeting Lila's eyes, her fury mirroring his own. "We don't stop," he said, voice steel. "They want a war, they'll get one." Lila nodded, already typing, her fingers flying across her phone. "I'm pushing my video. she said, uploading it to X, tagging activists and local bloggers. Let's see who's louder. Solomon watched her, pride swelling again, but a prickle ran down his spine. The smear wasn't just words, it was a blade cutting deeper than batons aimed at his name, his family, his city. He'd thought freedom was his, that Clara's pull had cracked the system open. But Voss and Drennan weren't done, their laughter from the squad car echoing in his skull. They'd turned Chicago against him, a city he'd served for decades, and the fight was no longer just his. It was Lila's, Clara's, every ally they'd pull into this storm. He sat, tea-cold, staring at the headline, knowing this was only the beginning. They'd struck back, vicious and swift, and whatever came next would be uglier. Solomon Carter sank into the sagging couch of his Hyde Park apartment, the faint scent of old leather and coffee grounding him. His 74-year-old body ached, bruises from officers Brent Voss and Kyle Drennan's batons pulsing under his sweater. The gash on his lip stung, a cruel memento of their attack outside the South Loop Blues Bar 3 nights ago. Blood had dried on his wool coat, now draped over a chair, its stains mirroring the smear that had hit harder than any fist. Windy Truths. Headline: Violent Drifter Attacks Cops. Burned in his mind, its doctored footage twisting his cane stumble into a thug's swing. Hashtags like Saumaku South Loop Thug still trended on X, Chicago's anger swallowing his name. A retired federal judge now branded a criminal. He rubbed his wrists raw from precinct cuffs and stared at the law books lining his walls, their spines a silent jury from his 30-year career. Had justice always been this fragile? Lila paced the cramped living room, her braided hair bouncing, phone glowing in her hand. At 22, his granddaughter was a storm, her singer's voice sharp with defiance. "We're fighting back, Grandpa," she said, scrolling X, where her video from the precinct, Voss's baton, Drennan's sneer, gained traction, thousands sharing Dr. Justice for Solomon. "They can't bury us." Solomon nodded, pride flickering through his exhaustion. Her clip, raw and unfiltered, showed the truth. A black elder beaten for standing still, his only crime his skin in a wealthy district. Yet Windy Truth's lie clung tighter, its bots drowning her post in slurs and skepticism. He'd walked out of that precinct thinking Clara Hensley's Supreme Court call had saved him, that freedom meant leverage. Now, with Chicago's eyes branding him a vagrant, he saw the cops' game. Voss and Drennan hadn't just cuffed him, they'd weaponized the city to crush his legacy. Morning light spilled through the apartment's curtains, catching dust motes over Solomon's oak table. He sipped cold tea, his silver hair glinting, and replayed the precinct's chaos. Lila's camera, the sergeant's scowl, Voss's parting jab, "Don't get comfy." They'd leaked the fake footage to Windy Truth, he was sure, a tabloid. Cozy with police unions, quick to paint black men as threats. The lie wasn't random, it was systemic, a machine grinding him down for daring to call Clara, for slipping their grip. Solomon's jaw tightened, resolve hardening. He'd faced worse in courtrooms, bigots in robes sneering as he argued civil rights cases. This was no different, just uglier, with higher stakes. Lila sat beside him, showing a new post. A local activist group rallying for him, planning a march. "See?" she said, eyes fierce. "We've got people." Hope stirred, fragile but real. Solomon dialed Marcus Tate, a lawyer friend from his judge days, 50, with a bulldog's grit and a knack for dismantling crooked cops. Marcus answered on the first ring, voice booming through the speaker. "Solomon, you're a damn legend for surviving those punks. I'm filing a brutality complaint against Voss and Drennan today. Excessive force, false arrest, the works. We'll hit them where it hurts." Solomon exhaled, a weight lifting. Marcus's plan was solid. The complaint would force an investigation, maybe suspend the cops, and Lila's video would be Exhibit 1. He imagined Voss's smirk fading, Drennan's badge yanked, the precinct squirming under scrutiny. "Make it stick," Solomon said, voice low. Marcus laughed, a fighter's edge in it. "Oh, it'll stick. You rest, brother, we've got this." By noon, Marcus texted, "Complaint filed, hearing set for tomorrow." Lila grinned, posting the update to X, her followers swelling, their comments a chorus of outrage and support. Solomon stood stretching his sore leg and looked out the window at Hyde Park's quiet streets. brownstones glowing under the sun. Kids biked past, a dog barked, life humming as if his world hadn't cracked. He felt momentum, a crack in the system's armor. The complaint wasn't just paper. It was a blade sharp enough to cut through Windy Truth's lies, to remind Chicago who he was, Solomon Carter, judge, not drifter. He turned to Lila, her fingers flying across her phone, amplifying the fight. "We're moving forward," he said, believing it. The precinct, the smear, the batons, they'd tried to break him and failed. Justice was stirring, and he'd fan its flames. Sleep came fitfully, his dreams jagged with batons and blood. At 5 in the morning, a crash shattered the quiet, the apartment door splintering under a battering ram. Solomon jolted upright, heart slamming as SWAT poured in, black vests gleaming, rifles raised. "Down now!" a commander barked, his voice a whip. Lila screamed, lunging for her phone, but a gloved hand yanked it away, smashing it against the wall. Solomon raised his hands slow, his bruised ribs screaming, and locked eyes with the commander, a white man with a scar slicing his brow. "What's the charge?" Solomon demanded, voice steady despite the chaos. The man smirked, tossing a warrant onto the table. "Felony assault on an officer, that cane of yours, a weapon. You're done, old man." Boots stomped through the apartment, flipping books, shattering mugs, tearing Esther's framed photo from the wall. Lila struggled as 2 officers pinned her arms, her braids whipping as she cursed. Solomon's chest burned, rage coiling, but he stayed calm, memorizing faces, badge numbers, 5239-7842. The warrant claimed he'd swung his cane first, cracking Drennan's arm, a lie built on Windy Truth's footage. They dragged him outside, the dawn cold against his thin shirt, no coat, no cane. Neighbors peeked from windows, phones out, but none stepped in, fear or shame freezing them. Lila was shoved into a separate van, her shouts muffled as it peeled away. Solomon's cuffs bit deeper than before, steel grinding his wrists, blood trickling as they tossed him into a squad car, tires screeching toward downtown. The courthouse loomed, a grey monolith under Chicago's smoggy sky. Solomon shuffled into a courtroom, cuffs clanking, the gallery packed with reporters, their pens scratching like locusts. Judge Vernon Holt presided, 60 white with a jowly face and eyes like flint. Solomon knew him, Holt's rulings favored cops, his chambers a revolving door for precinct brass. Marcus stood at the defense table, suit crisp, but his jaw was tight, sensing the trap. The prosecutor, a slick 30-something with a police union pin, laid out the charge. Felony assault based on eyewitness cops and the cane, now bagged as evidence, its wood photoshopped to look bloodied. "Carter's a danger," he sneered, tossing Windy Truth's headline onto the projector. Solomon's face glaring down, a thug in pixels. Holt leaned forward, his gavel a scepter, and fixed Solomon with a stare that screamed contempt. "You thought you could play hero, didn't you?" he said, voice dripping venom. "Bail set at $50,000, cash only." Marcus objected, citing Solomon's record, his age, Lila's video, but Holt waved him off, smirking. "Save. It, Tate, he's lucky it's not higher." The gallery murmured, cameras flashing, as marshals hauled Solomon to a holding cell, its steel door slamming shut. He sat, breath ragged, the cell's damp air clawing his lungs. Holt wasn't just a judge. He was Voss and Drennan's shield, a cog in a machine that turned black resistance into crime. Solomon's complaint had stung them, and this was their answer, a rigged court, a lie carved into law. News vans swarmed outside, their feeds blaring. Career criminal Carter charged. In cop attack. The story spun him as a lifelong menace, his judgeship erased, his cane a club, his blackness proof of guilt. Solomon's cell radio crackled, a pundit crowing, "Justice served for Chicago's finest." He clenched his fists, nails biting. His palms, and pictured Lila alone, maybe cuffed too. Marcus's complaint was buried now, the hearing a trap to lock him away. Voss and Drennan hadn't just smeared him, they'd weaponized the system, Holt their hammer, to crush his fight before it grew. He'd thought Clara's call, Lila's video, Marcus's grit would shift the tide. Instead, the tide had swallowed him deeper and colder than the precinct's bench. Solomon leaned against the cell's concrete wall, pain fading under fury. Holt's smirk, the prosecutor's pin, the SWAT raid, they were coordinated, a counterpunch to his defiance. He'd walked out of that precinct believing in justice, in his name's weight. Now charged as a felon, his legacy dust, he saw the truth. This wasn't just two cops, it was Chicago's underbelly, a city's hate dressed in robes and badges. Yet he breathed steady, mind sharpening. They'd hit harder, but he'd hit back smarter. Lila was out there, Marcus too, and Clara's voice lingered, a spark in the dark. The cell wasn't the end. It was a battlefield, and he'd fight from it, whatever came next. What do you make of this system's betrayal? Comment number 1 if you think Solomon's fight is stronger than their lies. Number 2 if you believe Holt's court is untouchable. Or number 3 if Lila's video can still turn the tide. Hit like, subscribe, and share to keep this battle burning. Because tomorrow's twist will hit harder than you expect. Can Solomon claw back from this rigged charge, or will Voss and Drennan's next move bury him deeper? Solomon Carter slumped against the peeling wall of a West Side safehouse, a dingy flat, reeking of mildew and burnt toast. His 74-year-old frame sagged, bruises from Voss and Drennan's batons throbbing under a borrowed flannel shirt. The gash on his lip scabbed over, but his wrist still burned from the precinct cuffs, now replaced by Judge Vernon Holt's felony assault charge, a lie that twisted his cane into a weapon. Chicago's airwaves still buzzed with windy truth smear, branding him a career criminal. His face plastered across screens, a black elder turned pariah. The safehouse's single bulb flickered, casting shadows over a sagging couch where Lila Carter sat, her 22-year-old defiance undimmed. Her braided hair was pulled tight, her leather jacket creased from a sleepless night. She scrolled X on a burner phone, her singer's fingers steady despite the chaos. "We're gaining ground, Grandpa," she said, showing him thousands of shares for justice for Solomon, her precinct video clawing back against the lies. Solomon nodded, pride battling the ache in his chest, but Holt's smirk lingered in his mind, a racist gavel slamming shut his hope. The flat's windows were boarded, muffling the hum of Chicago's streets 10 miles from Hyde Park's wreckage. Solomon's apartment, law books torn, Esther's photo shattered, felt like a lost country after the SWAT raid. Bailed out by Marcus Tate's legal hustle, Solomon had fled here, a favor from an old clerk who'd seen too many black men chewed up by the system. Lila had insisted on coming, her gig at the blues bar swapped for this fight. "They hit you, they hit me," she'd said, eyes fierce. Now her phone glowed with posts from strangers, activists, students, a pastor in Bronzeville, rallying. For him. Solomon rubbed his sore knee, picturing Marcus in his office, drafting motions to kill Holt's charge. The lawyer's voice echoed from yesterday's call. "We'll bury those cops, Solomon, hang tight." He wanted to believe it, to trust Lila's fire, his own grit. 3 decades judging federal cases had taught him systems bent, not broke. But this felt different, a crack wide enough to slip through. Lila stood stretching, her boots scuffing the warped floor. "I've got a gig tonight," she said, voice firm. "Bronzeville, small club. I'll sing, but I'm also spreading the word." Solomon frowned, his ribs tightening. "It's not safe," he said, picturing Voss's hazel eyes, Drennan's buzz-cut sneer. The cops hadn't just framed him. They'd turned Chicago against him, and Lila's posts made her a target. She shook her head, a smile flashing. "They don't scare me. Besides, the crowd's on our side." Solomon exhaled, knowing her stubbornness mirrored his own. He'd stood outside that bar for her, proud and steady, and now she'd fight. For him, guitar in hand, voice a weapon. "Be careful," he said, voice low. She nodded, grabbing her jacket, and slipped out, leaving him with the flat silence and a prickle of dread. Alone, Solomon paced, his limp worse without his cane, now locked in an evidence vault. He replayed Holt's courtroom, the prosecutor's, police pin, the doctored cane photo, the gallery's gasps. The charge wasn't just a lie, it was a leash tying him to bail conditions, court dates, a $50,000 debt Marcus had barely covered. Yet Lila's video, grainy but true, was shifting minds. and Marcus's complaint against Voss and Drennan was still alive, a thorn in their side. Solomon stopped, staring at a cracked mirror, his silver hair a ghost under the bulb. He wasn't the drifter Windy Truth sold. Just a black man who dared call Clara Hensley, who dared exist where Voss didn't want him. That call had sprung him once, and he'd make it burn them again. A knock rattled the door sharp and low. Solomon froze, heart thudding, but relaxed when a voice hissed, "It's Dana." Officer Dana Wells, 30, black, slipped inside, her uniform swapped for jeans, her eyes darting like a hunted deer. She'd reached out through Marcus, a whistleblower, risking her badge. "I've got something," she said, sliding a flash drive across the table. "Voss and Drennan's files, arrests, complaints, all buried. They've framed black men for years, quotas from Captain Ford himself." Solomon's pulse quickened, fingers closing around the drive, its weight a lifeline. Dana's voice shook, but her jaw was set. "Ford runs the precinct like a king. He protects those two, calls it cleaning up. You've got him rattled." Solomon nodded, hope surging. This was it. Proof to gut Voss, Drennan, maybe Ford too. He pictured Marcus flashing the files in court, Holt's smirk crumbling, the charge dissolving. "Thank you," he said, voice steady. Dana slipped out, shadows swallowing her, and Solomon tucked the drive in his pocket, believing the tide was turning. He sat, sketching a plan. Marcus could file the files tomorrow, demand an emergency hearing, suspend the cops. Lila's ex-campaign would amplify it, force the news to pivot from Windy Truth's lies. Solomon's chest loosened, a rare warmth spreading. He'd faced batons, cuffs, a rigged gavel, and now held a weapon sharper than his cane. The safe house's walls felt less like a cage, more like a bunker for war. He imagined Lila singing tonight, her voice rallying strangers, his name rising from the ashes. Voss. And Drennan thought they'd won, thought Holt's charge had silenced him. They were wrong. He closed his eyes, exhaustion tugging, and let himself dream of justice. Not just for him, but for every black face they'd smeared before. Lila's gig was at the Starlight Club, a Bronzeville dive pulsing with bass and sweat. She took the stage at 9, guitar slung low, her leather jacket gleaming under dim lights. The crowd, a mix of locals and activists, cheered as she strummed, her voice soaring, raw with pain and fire. Between songs, she spoke, holding her mic like a torch. "My grandfather's fighting for us," she said, eyes blazing. "They beat him, lied on him, but we're louder." Phones lit up, streaming her words. And justice for Solomon spiking on X. Solomon wasn't there. He'd stayed back, trusting her, but he'd have swelled with pride, her courage a mirror of his own. The club roared, glasses clinking, a community, alive with her spark. Lila felt unstoppable, her set a battle cry, believing the night would carry them forward. Then the doors burst open, wood splintering as police flooded in, vests black, batons drawn. The crowd screamed, bottles crashing, as officers shouted, "Nobody move!" Lila froze mid-chord, her guitar humming discord. A sergeant, his badge glinting, 6428, pointed at her, snarling, "Lila Carter, you're under arrest." The charge, inciting a riot, tied to her ex-posts calling out Voss and Drennan. Before she could speak, 2 cops lunged, slamming her against the stage, her guitar cracking under their boots. Pain seared her cheek as a baton grazed it, blood trickling onto her jacket. The crowd surged, phones filming, but tasers crackled, dropping 3 men to the floor. Lila kicked, cursing, but cuffs snapped tight, her wrists twisting as they dragged her out, her braids catching on a splintered rail. Outside, Chicago's night swallowed her screams, squad cars flashing red and blue. The sergeant shoved her into a van, his grin cold. "Your grandpa's trouble, but you? You're done." Lila spat at him, blood mixing with defiance, and caught a glimpse of the club, its neon sign fading as they sped away. News hit X within minutes, a police leak crowning. China gang affiliate Lila Carter arrested for riot. A mugshot, her face bruised, eyes fierce, spread faster than her video. Windy Truth spinning her as a thug's kin, her music a front for crime. Comments erupted, trolls gloating, drowning her supporters' cries. The Starlight's crowd scattered, fear choking their fire, and Bronzeville's pulse stuttered. Another black voice silenced. Solomon woke at midnight, a burner phone buzzing on the safe house's table. Marcus's voice cracked through, raw with panic. "They got Lila," he said, recounting the raid, the charge, the mugshot. Solomon's heart sank, the flash drive heavy in his pocket, useless now. He pictured Lila's grin, her guitar, her stage, gone, crushed by the same hate that cuffed. Him, smeared him, charged him. The safe house's bulb flickered, shadows clawing the walls, and he stood, legs shaking, rage swallowing pain. Dinah's files had promised a win, Marcus's hearing a path. But Voss and Drennan had struck deeper, targeting his blood, his hope. Ford's name burned in his mind, the captain's shadow behind the raid, a racist fist tightening around his family. He limped to the window, peeling back a board to glimpse the west side's dark streets, sodium lights buzzing like wasps. Lila was out there, cuffed, maybe bleeding, her voice caged because he'd fought back. Guilt gnawed sharper than Holt's gavel, but resolve hardened beneath it. They'd hit his granddaughter to break him, to choke the movement Lila's posts had sparked. He clutched the flash drive, its edges biting his palm, and vowed to free her, to gut Ford's precinct, to burn their lies to ash. The safe house wasn't a refuge anymore. It was a war room, and he'd fight from it no matter the cost. Voss and Drennan thought they'd won, thought Lila's cuffs were checkmate. They'd learn soon enough. Solomon Carter didn't break, and neither did his kin. Solomon Carter hunched over a wobbly table in a Rogers Park motel, the air thick with cigarette smoke and despair. His 74-year-old body groaned, bruises from Voss and Drennan's batons pulsing under a threadbare jacket. The gash on his lip flaked, a ghost of pain from that South Loop night, now dwarfed by the felony charge Judge Vernon Holt had slapped on him, twisting his cane into a weapon. Lila's arrest at the Bronzeville Club gnawed deeper. His 22-year-old granddaughter cuffed for inciting a riot, her guitar smashed, her mugshot viral, branded a gang affiliate by Windy Truth's lies. The motel's neon sign buzzed outside, casting red flickers through cracked blinds. A far cry from Solomon's shattered Hyde Park apartment. He rubbed his raw wrists, the precinct's cuffs replaced by fear for Lila, locked in a cell because he dared fight back. Had his call to Clara Hensley sparked a war he couldn't win? The room was a coffin, peeling wallpaper, a lumpy bed, a sink dripping like a metronome. Solomon had fled here after Lila's raid, Marcus Tate wiring bail money to spring him from Holt's $50,000 trap. Lila's bail was pending, Marcus battling a racist judge to free her, but Solomon's hope clung to a flash drive in his pocket, gifted by Officer Dana Wells. Her files, Voss and Drennan's history of framing black men, tied to Captain Ellis Ford's quotas, were dynamite, enough to gut the precinct, maybe save Lila. Solomon sat, his silver hair dull under the motel's bulb, and pictured her on that Starlight stage, voice soaring before batons fell. Her ex-posts had rallied thousands. Justice for Solomon trending despite Windy Truth's venom. He'd lost his cane, his home, his name, but not her fire, or his hone, Marcus called at dawn, his voice gravelly through a burner phone. "I've got a hearing tomorrow," he said, papers rustling. "Emergency motion to dismiss your charge using Dana's files. We'll hit Voss, Drennan, maybe Ford himself." Solomon's pulse quickened, fingers tracing the drive's edges. "And Lila?" he asked, throat tight. Marcus sighed. "Working on it. Judge is stonewalling, but her ex-buzz is pressure. Hang tight." Solomon nodded, alone in the dark, and envisioned the courtroom. Marcus's motions, Dana's proof, Holt's gavel cracking under truth. He'd been a judge 30 years, seen systems bend when pressed hard enough. The files weren't just data. They were a blade, sharp enough to free Lila, clear his name, torch the precinct's lies. He stood, limping without his cane, and felt momentum, a spark in the gloom. Lila was still cuffed, but her spirit reached him. Solomon checked X on a cheap laptop, her precinct video spiking again, activists sharing it with fury. A Bronzeville. Pastor posted, "Solomon Carter's no criminal, he's us." Comments swelled, drowning Windy Truth's trolls, and Solomon's chest warmed, pride battling guilt. Lila's arrest was his fault. Her posts, her stage, her fight for him had painted a target. Yet she'd known the risk, her boots stomping that club floor, her voice a war cry. He typed a message to Marcus, "Push the hearing, use everything." The motel's walls closed in, but Solomon breathed steady, picturing Lila free, Voss's smirk gone, Ford's precinct crumbling. He'd walked out of Holt's court believing justice was dead. Now with Dana's files it stirred, fragile but fierce, a pulse he'd fan into flame. By noon, Solomon met Marcus in the motel's lot, a grey drizzle soaking Chicago's north side. Marcus, 50, his suit rumpled, handed over a printed motion, thick with Dana's evidence, arrest logs, complaints, Ford's emails ordering takedowns. "This'll burn them," Marcus said, eyes glinting. "Hearing set for 3 tomorrow. Judge isn't Holt. Some new blood may be fair." Solomon clutched the papers, their weight heavier than the drive, and nodded. "Get Lila out," he said, voice steel. Marcus clapped his shoulder, promising to try, and drove off, leaving Solomon under the neon's hum, hope rising like steam. He returned to the room, spreading the files on the table, memorizing names, dates, lies. Voss had framed a teen in Englewood, Drennan a dad in Austin, Ford signing off each time, a racist kingpin shielding his knights. Solomon's jaw tightened, resolve hardening. Tomorrow they'd strike, Marcus in court, Lila's ex-army outside. Him as the spark. Night fell, the motel's buzz a distant drone. Solomon sat, drafting a statement for Marcus to read, his pen scratching. "I stood for my granddaughter, and they cuffed us both. These files prove their hate." He pictured the hearing, reporters, cameras, Ford squirming as Dana's truth hit. Lila might walk free, her mugshot fading, his charge dust. He'd faced Voss's batons, Holt's gavel, Windy Truth's lies, and now held a weapon to end it. The room felt alive, its damp air charged with possibility. Solomon leaned back, closing, his eyes believing the worst was behind him, that justice, slow but sure, was clawing through Chicago's rot. He'd been a fool to doubt. Clara's call, Lila's fire, Dana's risk were bricks in a wall he'd built to crush Ford's empire. A crash shattered the quiet, glass exploding inward as a Molotov cocktail hit the motel window, flames roaring. Across the room, Solomon lunged, heart slamming as fire licked the walls, swallowing the table, the files, his statement. Smoke choked his lungs, his bruised ribs screaming as he crawled toward the door. The blaze devoured Dana's papers, pages, curling black evidence ash in seconds. He kicked the door open, stumbling into the lot, coughing, eyes streaming. Lila's burner phone, tucked in his jacket, survived, but the files, his blade, his hope were gone. Fire sirens wailed, red trucks screaming up, but the motel was a pyre, its roof collapsing in sparks. Solomon staggered, knees buckling, and saw a brick in the rubble, red paint scrawled with a slur. "Stay down, boy." His gut twisted, rage flaring hotter than the flames. Firefighters swarmed, hoses blasting, their captain muttering, "Accident, probably." Solomon pointed at the brick, voice raw. "That's no accident." The man shrugged, eyes sliding. Away, and Solomon knew. Captain Ellis Ford's hand was here, the precinct's shadow stretching to Rogers Park. The slur wasn't random. It was a message signed in hate, tied to the cops who'd cuffed him, framed Lila, rigged Holt's court. He limped to the street, drizzle soaking his jacket, and dialed Marcus, breath ragged. "They burned it," he said, choking on smoke and fury. "The file's gone." Marcus cursed, voice cracking. "Hearings cancelled. Court says insufficient evidence without them. Lila's still locked up." Solomon's fist clenched, nails biting his palm, the brick's slur searing his mind. Ford hadn't just struck, he'd obliterated their plan, left Lila caged, him defenseless. The motel smoldered, firefighters poking the wreckage, neighbors watching from cracked sidewalks. Solomon stood, soaked and shivering, picturing Lila's cell, her braids, her broken guitar. He'd bailed her out in his heart, seen her walk free tomorrow, her voice rising again. Now, with Dana's files ash, Holt's charge loomed larger. Lila's bail a distant dream. Windy Truth would gloat, X would churn, another black family crushed, Ford's precinct untouched. Solomon's eyes narrowed, scanning the lot, spotting a camera blinking on a pole. Maybe it caught the thrower, a face, a plate. He memorized its angle, its rust, filing it away. Ford thought fire would break him, that slurs would silence him. He'd misjudged. Solomon's fight was his breath, and every blow sharpened it. He limped away, the brick's weight in his mind heavier than the lost files. Voss and Drennan were pawns. Ford was the king, his hate a machine grinding black lives to dust. The arson wasn't just revenge for Dana's leak. It was a warning, a fist to choke Lila's movement, to bury Solomon's name deeper than Windy Truth's lies. Yet he stood alive, Lila's phone buzzing with a text from Marcus. "We'll find another way." Solomon nodded, alone in the rain, resolve a steel core. They'd burned his hope, but not his will. Lila was cuffed, his charge alive. Ford's shadow vast. But he'd fight for her, for Chicago, for every name in those lost files. The war wasn't over, it was burning hotter than ever. What's your take on this fiery betrayal? Comment number 1 if you think Solomon's grit can outlast Ford's hate. Number 2 if you believe Lila's still the key to turning this fight. Or number 3 if Ford's power feels unbreakable. Hit like, subscribe, and share to fuel this. Battles blaze, because tomorrow's clash will shake you to your core. Will Solomon's next stand spark a city's fury, or has Ford's torch left him nothing but ashes? Solomon Carter stood in the cramped kitchen of a Chatham community center, the air heavy with coffee and sweat. His 74-year-old frame leaned hard on a borrowed walker, bruises from Voss and Drennan's batons throbbing beneath a faded sweater. The gash on his lip had scabbed, but his heart ached sharper. Lila, his 22-year-old granddaughter, was still cuffed in a Chicago cell, charged with inciting a riot for her Bronzeville performance. The motel fire that devoured Officer Dana Wells's files, proof of Captain Ellis Ford's racist precinct, smoldered in his memory, the slur-scrawled brick, "Stay down, boy," a taunt that fueled his rage. Judge Vernon Holt's felony charge, branding Solomon's cane a weapon, hung like a noose, while Windy Truth's lies painted him a career criminal across Chicago's screens. The center's fluorescent lights buzzed, casting stark glows on folding tables where volunteers stuffed flyers, their chatter a pulse of defiance. Had Ford's fire only stoked a bigger blaze? Chatham's streets hummed outside, 10 miles from Mice. The Rogers Park ashes, a black neighborhood alive with grit and pride. Solomon had fled here after the arson, a pastor friend offering this hub as sanctuary, its walls plastered with posters of Malcolm, King, and local heroes. Lila's arrest had gutted him, her guitar smashed, her mugshot viral, Windy Truth spinning, her as a gang affiliate to choke her ex-campaign. Yet her precinct video, raw with Voss's baton, still surged online, drawn to justice for Solomon trending past the trolls. Solomon's fingers tightened on the walker, his silver hair catching light, and he pictured Marcus Tate battling to free Lila, his emergency hearing snuffed by the lost files. Ford's precinct wasn't just fighting, it was hunting, crushing. His family for daring to call Clara Hensley, for daring to breathe where hate ruled. A young organizer, Tasha, 25, her locks tied high, slammed a megaphone on a table. "We march today," she said, eyes blazing at the crowd, students, elders, workers, all nodding. "For Solomon, Lila, every name they've buried." Solomon's chest warmed, guilt tangling with pride. Tasha had seen Lila's posts, rallied. Hundreds after the motel fire, her flyers screaming, "Ford must fall." He limped forward, voice low but firm. "They'll hit back," he warned, picturing Ford's cold eyes, a captain who'd burned his hope to ash. Tasha grinned, fierce. "Let them. We're louder." Solomon nodded, hope flickering despite the ache in his knee, the walker's creak. He'd stood outside that blues bar, proud for Lila, and now Chatham stood for him, a tide he'd ride to free her. The center buzzed, volunteers taping signs. Justice now, free Lila, while Solomon strategized with Tasha. Marcus called, voice strained through a burner phone. "Lila's hearing's tomorrow, but the judge is Ford's buddy. I'm pushing for bail using ex-Buzz as leverage. Rally big today, it'll help." Solomon's jaw tightened, picturing Lila's braids, her stage fire, now caged. "Make it count," he said, hanging up. Tasha handed him a sign, her hand steady. "You lead with us, Judge Carter. Show them you're still here." Solomon gripped the wood, its weight lighter than Holt's charge, and felt momentum, a city's pulse syncing with his own. He'd lost Dana's files, his cane, his home, but not this. People, voices, a chance to crack Ford's armor. He believed. Again the center's hum a war drum, justice no longer a dream but a fight. By noon the march spilled onto 79th Street, thousands strong, a sea of signs and fists slicing Chicago's cold air. Solomon walked at the front, Walker clanking, Tasha's megaphone amplifying his voice. "They beat me for standing still," he shouted, ribs aching. "Cuffed my granddaughter for singing truth. This isn't justice, it's war." The crowd roared their chant. Solomon lives, Ford falls, shaking brownstones, storefronts. L tracks. Phones filmed, X exploding with streams. And as justice for Solomon spiking globally. Solomon's eyes burned, not from wind but pride, seeing students, barbers, nurses march for Lila. For him, for every black life Ford's precinct crushed. He pictured Voss's smirk fading, Drennan's badge tarnished, Holt's gavel silent. The tide was turning, Chicago waking, and he stood tall, Walker or not, a judge again, leading not from a bench but a street. The march snaked through Chatham, 3 miles of asphalt pulsing with defiance, banners flapping like sails. Tasha passed, Solomon Water, her grin fierce. "We're unstoppable," she said, pointing at a drone overhead, likely news, beaming their fight to millions. Solomon nodded, sweat beading despite the chill, and believed it. Marcus's hearing tomorrow, Lila's voice online, this crowd's roar. It was enough to bury Ford, to free his kin. He'd faced batons, fire, a rigged court, and now held a city's anger, sharper than Dana's lost files. The L rumbled above, kids waving from windows, and Solomon felt alive, his bruises badges, his limper march of its own. They'd tried to erase him, but Chatham's streets screamed his name, a verdict louder than Holt's. Then chaos struck, a hiss slicing the air as tear gas canisters rained from rooftops, white clouds choking the crowd. Solomon coughed, eyes streaming, as screams erupted, signs dropping, phones clattering. The march fractured, marchers stumbling, while snipers, black-masked, perched on buildings, fired more, gas hissing like snakes. Tasha grabbed Solomon's arm, pulling him toward an alley, but boots thundered behind, riot cops storming in, shields gleaming, batons swinging. "Riot!" a sergeant barked, badge 9341, his voice a lie as he clubbed a teen to the ground. Solomon's heart slammed, Walker slipping as gas burned his lungs, his ribs screaming. The crowd wasn't rioting, they'd marched in peace, but Ford's precinct had sprung a trap, turning their chant into chaos. Police vans screeched up, hundreds cuffed, students, elders, Tasha among them, charged with terrorism, a word that stabbed Solomon's gut. He staggered into the alley, Tasha's grip lost, and collapsed against a dumpster. Breath-ragged, Walker bent from a cop's kick. Sirens wailed, gas swirling, as X lit up with a new video. Solomon, leading a riot, edited to show him shouting. Signs blazing, snipers erased. Windy Truth pounced, headlines screaming, Carter's mob burns Chatham. His face grainy, a warlord, not a judge. Comments surged, trolls gloating, told you he's a thug, drowning Lila's supporters. Solomon's chest heaved, rage swallowing pain, as he realized Ford's hand, Captain Ellis Ford, the arson's master, had orchestrated this, crushing the march to crush him. Chicago's mayor, a suit cozy with Ford, took TV at dusk, condemning Solomon as a danger, urging calm while praising the precinct's restraint. Solomon, hidden in the alley, heard it on a looter's radio, the betrayal slicing deeper than Holt's gavel. Marcus was arrested in the sweep, cuffed for aiding terrorism, his hearing snuffed, Lila's bail frozen. The community center was raided, flyers shredded, Tasha's megaphone smashed. Solomon limped deeper into shadows, Walker scraping, and dialed Clara Hensley, voice hoarse. "They turned it," he said, coughing. "Ford's killing us." Clara's silence was heavy, then sharp. "I'm pushing DOJ, but stay low." He hung up alone, the city's pulse now a dirge, his name poison again. Ford hadn't just struck, he'd rewritten the march, a peaceful cry into a terrorist plot. Solomon, its puppet master. The snipers weren't random, they were Ford's. Off-duty goons or worse, erasing Lila's spark, Marcus's fight, Chatham's hope. Solomon's eyes narrowed, scanning the alley's graffiti, spotting a camera on a pole, its lens glinting. Maybe it caught the snipers, a crack in Ford's... Lie. He memorized its angle, his mind ablaze despite the gas's sting. They'd cuffed Lila, burned his files, now crushed a city's voice, each blow uglier, aimed at his kin, his legacy. Yet he stood, walker creaking, and vowed to fight for Tasha, Marcus, Lila, every face in that crowd. The safe house was gone, Chicago hostile, but Solomon Carter wasn't done. Ford's trap had only sharpened his war. Solomon Carter crouched in a Garfield Park basement, the air thick with damp rot and motor oil. His 74-year-old body sagged against a concrete wall, bruises from Voss and Drennan's batons pulsing under a tattered coat. The scab on. His lip cracked when he grimaced, a faint echo of that South Loop beating, now buried under Judge Vernon Holt's felony charge, Lila's arrest, and a torched motel. The Chatham March, thousands chanting for justice, had crumbled under Ford's snipers, tear gas choking Solomon's lungs, his borrowed walker bent by a riot cop's boot. Marcus Tate, his lawyer, was cuffed in the sweep, labeled a terrorist while Lila, 22, rotted in a cell, her guitar a wreck, her ex-voice drowned by Windy Truth's lies. The basement's single bulb swayed, casting jagged shadows over crates, a far cry from Solomon's lost Hyde Park home. Could trust ever survive a city this cruel? Garfield Park streets whispered outside, 15 miles from Chatham's gas-soaked chaos, a neighborhood scarred but stubborn. Solomon had limped here after the march, a janitor friend slipping him keys to this hideout, its walls stained with years of neglect. Lila's mugshot, gang affiliate, burned in his mind, Windy Truth twisting her Bronzeville performance into crime, Ford's precinct crushing her for his fight. The mayor's TV jab calling Solomon a danger had turned Chicago hostile. X splitting between justice for Solomon and Troll's crowing thug. His fingers gripped the walker's handles, silver hair dull under the bulb, and he pictured Marcus's last call before the cuffs. Keep fighting, brother. Ford's fire had burned Dana Wells's files. His snipers had crushed the march, but Solomon's pulse still beat, a judge's grit unbowed by Holt's gavel. Lila stirred on a cot, her burner phone glowing, its battery low, but alive. She'd been bailed out by a protest fund, Marcus's last act before his arrest. Her braids loose, eyes fierce despite jail's toll. We're not done, she said, scrolling X, where supporters shared her precinct video. Voss's baton a spark against Windy Truth's flood. Solomon's chest ached, guilt clawing. He'd led the march, drawn Ford's wrath, put Lila back in the crosshairs. Yet her defiance, her singer's fire, kept him upright. We need proof, he said, voice low, picturing the alley camera from Chatham, its lens a faint hope. Lila nodded, typing a message to Tasha, the march's organizer, now free but shaken. She's digging, Lila said, but we need Dana. Solomon's jaw tightened, Dana's flash drive a ghost, her files ash in Rogers Park. Could she deliver again? A text buzzed Lila's phone, cryptic but urgent. Pier, midnight. Ledger. Dibby. Solomon's pulse spiked. Dana Wells, the whistleblower cop, offering a new weapon, a ledger of Ford's bribes, names and payoffs, tying Voss, Drennan, maybe Holt to his empire. He limped to a crate, his walker scraping, and met Lila's eyes, her nod firm. We go, she said, pocketing the phone, her leather jacket creased but ready. Solomon hesitated, picturing Ford's snipers, the motel's flames, but hope flared, sharp as a blade. Dana had risked her badge once, exposed Ford's quotas. Now a ledger could gut him, free Marcus, clear Lila's name, end Holt's charge. He'd trusted her then, believed her files would win, and now with nothing but a bent walker he'd trust again. Midnight, he agreed, voice steel, believing this was the crack to split Ford's throne. The day dragged, basement shadows lengthening as Solomon and Lila planned. He sketched the pier on a napkin, Lake Michigan's edge, deserted, 30 miles north, a maze of crates and rusted rails. Lila checked X, her posts gaining, a pastor rallying Chatham anew, Tasha's crew vowing to march again. Solomon's ribs ached, but his mind raced, picturing the ledger, bank transfers, emails, Ford's hand exposed. He'd been a judge, seen paper trails topple giants. This could bury the precinct, force Clara Hensley's DOJ to act, save his kin. Lila packed water, a flashlight, her grin fierce. "They'll never see us coming," she said, and Solomon felt it, a tide turning. The basement no longer a tomb but a war room. Their fight alive despite Ford's gas, fire, lies. Midnight cloaked the pier, Lake Michigan's waves slapping concrete, a bitter wind cutting through Solomon's coat. The sky was starless, Chicago's glow faint, the pier's lamps flickering like dying eyes. He limped beside Lila, Walker clanking, his bruised knee screaming, but hope drowned the pain. Crates loomed, shadows pooling, and Dana emerged, her jeans dark, face taut under a hoodie. "Got it," she whispered, holding a thin ledger, pages crisp with numbers, names. Ford, Voss, Drennan, judges, brass. Solomon's fingers shook, grasping it, its weight heavier than gold. "This ends them," he said, voice low, picturing Marcus reading it in court. Lila free, Ford cuffed. Dana nodded, eyes darting, and stepped back, her hand slipping to her belt. Was that fear? Or something colder? Then it broke. A click shattering the quiet as Dana drew a gun, its barrel glinting, aimed at Solomon's chest. "You're too late," she said, voice flat, no trace of the whistleblower's grit. Lila gasped, lunging, but Solomon grabbed, her arm heart slamming, his walker tipping. "Ford's mole," he rasped, the ledger suddenly led, a lure, not a lifeline. Dana smirked, tossing a match, flames leaping as the ledger burned, pages curling black, names ash on the pier. "He owns me," she said, stepping aside as boots thundered. Voss and Drennan, eyes wild, batons raised. Voss's hazel stare locked on Solomon, a predator's glee. "Thought you'd win, old man," he snarled, swinging, cracking Solomon's shoulder, pain exploding white-hot. Drennan grabbed Lila, his buzz cut gleaming, fist slamming her jaw, blood spraying as she fell. Solomon roared, lunging despite the pain, his walker crashing into Voss's knee, a sickening crunch. Lila kicked, her boot catching Drennan's shin, but Dana's gun stayed steady, forcing them back. Voss swung again, baton splitting Solomon's brow, blood flooding his eye, his coat soaking red. "Ford says hi," Drennan growled, kneeing Lila's ribs, her gasp a knife in Solomon's gut. The pier spun, waves mocking as Solomon staggered, clutching Lila, their fight ash like the ledger. A stray dog barked, darting from crates, its snarl startling Dana. Her gun wavered, and Solomon shoved Lila toward a gap, stumbling after, pain blinding, blood pooling. They rolled behind steel, boots fading, Dana's curse echoing as she vanished, leaving a note pinned to a crate. "Ford's untouchable." Solomon slumped, breath ragged, Lila clutching her jaw, blood dripping. The ledger's ashes swirled, Lake Michigan swallowing Ford's secrets. Voss and Drennan's laughter faded, their ambush a blade to Solomon's hope. Dana's betrayal its hilt. He'd trusted her, seen her files as salvation, this ledger as checkmate. Now, with Lila bruised, Marcus cuffed, the march crushed. He saw Ford's reach, captain, mole, cops, a racist web tighter than Holt's court. The note burned in his hand, its taunt clear. Ford wasn't just fighting, he was playing God, crushing Solomon's kin, his city, his name. Yet Solomon's eyes narrowed, blood crusting, and he tucked the note away, mind sharpening. They'd struck deepest, but he'd strike smarter. For Lila, for Marcus, for the pier's lost truth. What's your stance on this gut-punch betrayal? Comment number 1. If you think Solomon's still got fight left despite Dana's knife. Number 2. If Lila's courage can outshine Ford's web, or number 3, if Ford's mole proves he's unstoppable. Hit like, subscribe, and share to keep this fire raging, because tomorrow's blow will hit harder than you can imagine. Can Solomon rebuild from this pier's ashes, or will Ford's next strike tear his family apart for good? Solomon Carter huddled in a Pilsen warehouse, the air sharp with rust and mold, his 74-year-old body slumped against a steel beam. Blood crusted his brow where Voss's baton had split skin on the pier. his shoulder throbbing from the ambush that shattered his hope. Lila, 22, sat beside him, her jaw bruised from Drennan's fist, her leather jacket torn, eyes hollow after Dana Wells's betrayal. The ledger, a promised list of Ford's bribes, had burned to ash, Dana's gun revealing her as Ford's mole, her note taunting, "Ford's untouchable." Judge Vernon Holt's felony charge clung to Solomon, Lila's riot arrest. A fresh wound while Windy Truth's lies, thug, gang affiliate, poisoned Chicago's air. The warehouse's broken windows whistled, 10 miles from Garfield Park's basement, a hideout scavenged by a loyal clerk. Solomon gripped a borrowed cane, its wood foreign, and wondered if Ford's hate would ever break. Pilsen's streets murmured outside, a Latino stronghold pulsing with murals and defiance, 20 miles from the pier's ashes. Solomon had dragged Lila here, their escape from Voss and Drennan fueled by a stray dog's bark. But Dana's smirk lingered, her betrayal a blade deeper than Holt's gavel. Lila's arrest, the motel fire, the sniper-trapped march, all Ford's work, a racist captain grinding Solomon's family for his Supreme Court call to Clara Hensley. Marcus Tate, their lawyer, rotted in a cell, cuffed as a terrorist. After Chatham, leaving Lila's bail frozen, Solomon's charge a noose. Yet Lila's burner phone, cracked but alive, held X-posts. Justice for Solomon spiking despite trolls. Solomon's silver hair caught a skylight's glow, his ribs aching, but Lila's presence, her singer's grit, kept him fighting. They'd lost Dana's truth but not each other. Lila stood wincing, her bruised jaw set. "We hit back," she said, pulling the phone, its screen faint. "Ford's not God." Solomon nodded, pride battling guilt. Her cuffs, her blood, were his war's cost. He'd taught her to sing, to fight, and now she paid for it. "We need proof," he said, picturing the pier's camera, maybe catching Dana's match. Lila tapped a message to Lena Price, a journalist who'd backed them since the Blues Bar, her sight dodging Windy Truth spots. "Lena's got sources," Lila said, hope flickering. "She'll run anything we find." Solomon's cane tapped the concrete, mind churning. Ford's precinct wasn't just cops. It was a machine. Voss, Drennan, Dana, Holt, all cogs in. His hate. They needed a crack, something to free Marcus, save Lila, end this. By dawn, Solomon rigged an old laptop, its keys sticky, and hacked a precinct server with Lila's help, her tech knack sharper than his judge's logic. They breached a back door, Ford's emails, grainy but damning, showing offshore accounts, payoffs to judges, unions, even Windy Truth's editor. "Got him," Solomon whispered, heart pounding, as Lila downloaded files, their size crawling, 60 megabytes of truth. He pictured Marcus reading them in court, Clara's DOJ moving Holt's charge dust. Lila grinned despite her bruises, and sent the files to Lena, her email encrypted, titled Ford's End. Solomon's chest loosened, hope surging like a tide. He'd stood outside that bar, proud, and Ford had burned everything since. His home, Lila's stage, Dana's trust. Now these accounts were a spear sharp enough to pierce the captain's armor. Lila's phone pinged, Lena's reply swift. "Files legit. Publishing tonight." Solomon exhaled, the warehouse's chill fading, its beams no longer a cage but a bunker. He imagined Lena's sight crashing Ford's lies, X flipping, Chicago waking. Lila's riot charge would crumble, Marcus's cuff snap, his own name, 3 decades a judge shine again. "We did it," Lila said, her voice a singer's note, clear despite pain. Solomon nodded, believing it, the laptop's hum a war drum. They'd hacked Ford's secrets, outrun Dana's gun, and now held a weapon stronger than the lost ledger. He'd doubted after the pier, thought Ford unbreakable. But Pilsen's shadows proved him wrong. Justice wasn't dead. It was theirs, waiting to strike. Night fell, the warehouse dark save for a lantern's glow, its light dancing on Lila's braids. Solomon sat, cane across his lap, replaying the emails. Ford to Holt, $10,000 for loyalty. Voss to a bank, 50,000 wired. He'd seen such trails topple giants in court, and this would bury Ford, free his kin, end the war. Lila checked X, Lena's teaser post live. Chicago precinct exposed midnight. Hashtag surged. Das Ford must fall. Trending, and Solomon felt it. A city's pulse, his name rising from Windy Truth's mud. He'd lost his cane, his files, his march. But not Lila's fire, not this fight. The warehouse was their stand, and Ford's empire would crack under its weight. A rumble shattered the quiet, the warehouse door exploding inward, splinters flying. As masked men stormed in, black fatigues gleaming, rifles raised, Solomon lurched, cane clattering, as Lila screamed, diving for the laptop, but a boot crushed it, sparks spitting. The intruders, Ford's militia, off-duty cops, eyes cold behind. Balaclavas grabbed Lila, zip ties snapping her wrists, a rifle butt cracking her temple, blood streaking her cheek. "No," Solomon roared, lunging, but a fist slammed his gut, doubling him over, his bruised ribs screaming. The leader, 6 feet, voice muffled, yanked Lila up, her braids swinging, and shoved her toward a van outside, tires screeching. "Ford says quit, old man," he growled, tossing a tablet at Solomon's feet, its screen flickering to life. Solomon crawled, blood pooling, and grabbed the tablet, its video playing, Lila bound in a dark room, zip ties cutting her wrists, a knife carving slurs into her arm, her gasps muffled by a gag. Ford's voice crackled, a venomous drawl, "Quit, or she's dead." The screen froze, Lila's eyes wide, defiant despite pain, and Solomon's heart shattered, guilt drowning, rage. The militia vanished, van fading into Pilson's night, leaving him tied to a beam, ropes biting his wrists, blood dripping onto concrete. He strained, cane gone, Walker lost, and saw Lena's sight crash, ex-posts screaming, "Server down." Ford hadn't just struck. He'd stolen Lila, killed their proof, turned victory to dust. The ropes cut deeper, Solomon's breath ragged, the tablet's glow mocking him. He'd hacked Ford's accounts, sent them to Lena, believed the world would shift. Now Lila bled somewhere, her fire caged, Marcus still cuffed, Lena's sight dead. Ford's militia wasn't just cops, it was terror, racist hate carved into Lila's skin, a message to every black voice daring to rise. Solomon's mind raced, picturing the van's plates, the leader's height, filing details like court briefs. He'd trusted Dana, lost her, trusted Lena, lost her too. Yet Lila's eyes on that screen, fierce despite blood, lit his core. He twisted, rope fraying, and broke free, collapsing, caneless, bloody but alive. The warehouse was a tomb, its silence louder than the militia's boots. Solomon staggered up, clutching the tablet, Ford's voice looping in his skull. "Quit or she's dead." He'd stood for Lila, marched for her, hacked for her, and now she paid, her arm scarred because he'd fought. Guilt clawed, sharper. Then Holt's charge, but resolve burned hotter. Ford thought kidnapping would break him, that slurs would silence him. He'd misjudged. Solomon's fight was his blood, Lila's too, and every blow forged it stronger. He limped to the door, Pilson's murals glowing under streetlights, and vowed to find her. Gut Ford. End this war. The tablet's battery died, but his will didn't. Lila was out there, and he'd tear Chicago apart to save her. Solomon Carter limped through a muddy field, 50 miles from Chicago's Pilson warehouse, his 74-year-old body screaming with every step. Blood flaked from his brow, Voss's baton, a ghost in his skull, joined now by fresh bruises from Ford's militia, who'd kidnapped Lila, his 22-year-old granddaughter. Her face, bound slurs carved into her arm, burned on that tablet video, Ford's voice taunting, "Quit or she's dead." The warehouse raid had crushed their hacked files, Lena Price's sight down, Marcus Tate still cuffed as a terrorist. Judge Vernon Holt's felony charge choked Solomon, Windy Truth's lies, thug, criminal, a city's curse. His borrowed cane sank into the dirt, silver hair matted with sweat, as he neared a rural Illinois barn, its red planks sagging under dawn's grey light. Could he save Lila before Ford's hate claimed her forever? The barn loomed, 30 miles. From Joliet's neon, a militia hideout tracked through a van's plate Solomon had memorized in Pilson's chaos. He'd fled the warehouse, ropes cut from his wrists, and called Lena Price, the journalist who'd dodged Ford's digital axe. Her voice crackled through a burner phone, grim but steady. "Got a tip. Lila's there, guarded, alive. I'm coming." Solomon's chest tightened, guilt clawing. Lila's blood, her cuffs were his war's price, sparked by his Supreme Court call to Clara Hensley. Dana's betrayal, the motel fire, the sniper-trapped march. All Ford's racist machine, grinding, his kin for defiance. Yet Lila's ex-spark, justice for Solomon, still flickered, posts raging despite windy truth's trolls. He gripped the cane, ribs aching, and vowed to free her, end Ford's reign, no matter the cost. Dawn broke, mist curling over the field, the barn's windows dark, its silo a rusted sentinel. Solomon crouched behind a fence, cane digging mud, and spotted guards. 3 militia, rifles slung, Ford's off-duty dogs, their laughter low. Lena arrived, 40, her braids tight, a pistol tucked in her jeans, eyes sharp with a reporter's hunger. 6 inside, she whispered, scanning with binoculars. Lila's in the loft, tied. Solomon's pulse spiked, picturing her braids, her singer's fire, now bound by Ford's hate. He'd hacked Ford's accounts, believed Lena's sight would win, only to lose her to that video's knife. Now, with nothing but a cane and Lena's grit, he'd storm this hell, bring Lila home, crack Ford's empire. They moved, silent as shadows, Lena's pistol raised, Solomon's cane a quiet tap. The guards smoked, oblivious, as Lena slipped. Behind one, her arm locking his throat, dropping him limp. Solomon's heart pounded, his bruised knee buckling, but he followed, disabling a second with a cane jab to the neck, breath ragged. The third turned, rifle lifting, but Lena's shot, silenced, precise, grazed his leg, crumpling him. They dragged the men to a shed, zip-tying wrists, and breached the barn, its doors creaking, hay dust choking the air. Lila was upstairs, a silhouette in the loft, ropes binding her, blood on her jacket. Solomon's eyes burned, pride and pain colliding as he climbed, Lena covering, their plan a whisper. Free her, run, expose Ford. The loft was a cage, bales stacked, a single bulb swaying, Lila's wrists raw, her jaw bruised but eyes fierce. "Grandpa," she gasped, voice hoarse as Solomon cut her ropes, his cane trembling, blood from his brow dripping onto hay. Lena stood guard, pistol steady, her nod firm. "We've got her," she said, and Solomon hugged Lila, her warmth. A lifeline, his ribs screaming but ignored. They'd hacked Ford's secrets, lost them, lost Marcus, but now held Lila, their fight alive. He believed it, freedom, justice, Ford's fall, all close enough to touch. Lila stood wincing, her arms scarred with slurs, but her grin flashed, singer's fire unbowed. "Let's go," she said, and Solomon felt it, a tide turning, the barn their victory. They descended, hay crunching, Lena leading to a militia truck, its keys dangling in the ignition. Solomon helped Lila in, her steps shaky, his cane scraping. Boards. The engine roared, tires spitting gravel as they sped from the barn, fields blurring, 50 miles to Chicago's safety. Solomon's chest heaved, hope soaring. He'd saved her, defied Ford, Lena alive to tell it. He pictured Marcus freed, Holt's charge dust, windy truth silenced, Lila singing again. The truck rattled, dawn's light warming, and Solomon believed. They'd won. That Ford's militia, his snipers, his lies were cracking under their escape. Lila squeezed his hand, her bloodied arm a badge, and he smiled, rare, real, thinking the worst was dust. A whine pierced the air, high and mechanical, as a drone swooped from the sky, its black shell glinting, a missile flashing. The truck exploded, flipping into a ditch, metal screaming, glass shattering, flames licking Solomon's face. His body slammed dirt, cane lost, ribs cracking anew, blood flooding his mouth. Lila's scream cut off, silenced by smoke, as militia boots thundered. Ford's goons swarming, rifles raised. They yanked Lila from the wreckage, her jacket burning, zip ties snapping her wrists again, blood streaming from her temple. Solomon crawled, vision swimming, and saw Lena, motionless, her pistol crushed, a bullet through her chest. Dead. Her braids splayed in mud. The militia leader, 6 feet balaclava tight, kicked Solomon's gut, snarling, "Ford owns you." A burner phone landed beside him, Ford's voice crackling, "You'll never outrun me." Solomon gasped, dirt clotting his wounds, the phone's glow mocking. Lila gone, Lena dead, the truck a pyre. Militia vans screeched away, Lila's silhouette fading, her fire stolen again. Chicago's news hit X, Windy Truth screaming, "Carter bombs barn. Terrorist strikes Illinois." His face flashed grainy. A warlord torching peace, the drone strike pinned on him, no mention of Ford's men. Comments surged, "Kill him. Thugs end. Drowning Jari's justice." For Solomon's spark. Solomon's fingers shook, clutching. The phone, Ford's laugh ablade. He'd rescued Lila, believed her free, only to lose her to a drone, Lena to a bullet, his name to lies worse than Holt's charge. The field was a grave, his hope ash, Ford's hate, a storm untouched. He staggered. Up, blood soaking his coat, cane gone, leg buckling under fractured ribs. The barn burned in the distance, sirens faint, likely Ford's allies, not saviors. Solomon's mind raced, filing the drone's hum, the leader's kick, Lena's last nod. He'd hacked Ford's accounts, trusted Lena's pen, stormed this. Hell for Lila, and failed. Her scarred arm, her gasp fueled his core. Ford thought this broke him, that kidnapping, murder, lies would silence a judge's fight. He'd misjudged. Solomon's pulse was war, every blow sharpening it. He limped toward Joliet, 50 miles away, a fugitive branded terrorist, but alive, vowing to find Lila, gut Ford, end this. The phone died, but his will burned. A spark. In the mud, unbowed by Ford's sky. What's your take on this shattering blow? Comment number 1 if you think Solomon's vow can still topple Ford's terror, number 2 if Lila's fire will outlast her chains, or number 3 if Ford's drone proves he's beyond reach. Hit like, subscribe, and share to keep this fight blazing, because tomorrow's truth will cut deeper than you expect. Will Solomon's next move pierce Ford's shadows, or has this strike buried his hope for good? Solomon Carter slumped in a Joliet motel, 60 miles from Chicago's smoldering scars, his 74-year-old body a map of pain. Blood crusted his face, Voss's baton a ghost joined by militia kicks from the Illinois barn, where Ford's drone had flipped their truck, stealing Lila again. Her bloodied arm, slurs carved deep, haunted him, Ford's voice on that burner phone snarling, "You'll never outrun me." Lena Price lay dead, a bullet through her chest. Marcus Tate, cuffed as a terrorist, while Judge Vernon Holt's felony charge branded Solomon a fugitive. Windy Truth's lies, Carter bombs barn, painted him a warlord, X drowning in hate, justice for Solomon a faint pulse. The motel's walls reeked of bleach, a neon sign buzzing outside, his borrowed cane splintered from the crash. Had Ford's hate grown too vast to fight? Joliet's quiet streets whispered. A factory town far from Pilson's raided warehouse, its murals now a memory. Solomon had limped here, dodging sirens, a clerk's tip hiding him in this dive, its curtains, moth-eaten bed sagging. Lila's kidnapping gutted him, her 22-year-old fire-caged, her guitar dust, her ex-spark choked by Ford's militia. The Chatham March, the motel fire, Dana's betrayal, all Ford's racist machine, punishing his call to Clara Hensley, a Supreme Court spark that burned his kin. His silver hair caught a lamp's flicker, ribs cracked, shoulder throbbing, but his mind stayed sharp, filing the drone's whine, the militia's boots. He'd rescued Lila, held her, only to lose her to Ford's sky. Lena's blood on his hands, his name ash in Chicago's mouth. A cracked TV droned, Windy Truth looping his terrorist face. No mention of Ford's drone, the militia's rifles. Solomon's fingers shook, clutching the dead burner phone, Ford's laugh a loop. "You'll never outrun me." He'd hacked Ford's accounts, trusted Lena's pen, stormed a barn for Lila, and failed, each blow uglier, racist hate carving, deeper than Holt's charge. Yet Lila's eyes in that video, defiant despite slurs, fueled him. He pried the phone's case, finding a hidden chip, its circuits glinting, a militia slip, maybe a key. Solomon limped to a pawned laptop, its keys gummy, and rigged a reader, heart pounding, as texts loaded. Ford to a senator, a judge, cops, a cabal spanning states, targeting black leaders, Chicago a test. The screen glowed, name stark, Senator. Hail Judge Warwick, Brass in D.C., Atlanta, L.A. A racist web, payoffs for silence, arrests worse. Solomon's breath caught. the chip a bomb heavier than Dana's ledger, tying Ford to a national hydra, Holt a pawn, Voss and Drennan foot soldiers. He'd stood outside that blues bar, proud for Lila, and sparked a war beyond Chicago, his call to Clara a threat to their empire. His cane tapped, mind racing. Expose this, free Lila, Marcus, end Ford's reign. He emailed Clara, encrypting the chip's texts, his message short. Ford's not alone. National. Act. The motel's hum felt alive, a pulse sinking with his own justice no longer local but vast. A fight for every black life this cabal crushed. Clara's reply was instant, voice crackling through a burner he'd scavenged. Got it, Solomon. DOJ's moving, but this is big. Senators, judges, deep, stay hidden. He nodded, picturing her in D.C., grey hair pulled tight, Supreme Court steel pushing feds. The chip's truth could gut Ford, free Lila, but its weight scared him. Holt's charge, Windy Truth's lies were pebbles to this Hydra's claws. Solomon stood, cane creaking, and checked Lila's video spiking. Young Ford must fall trending despite bots. Protests erupted. Atlanta, Harlem, Oakland, chanting his name, signs stabbing skies, a nation waking to his fight. His chest warmed, pride. Battling pain, believing Clara's pull, the chip's truth would shift it all, save his kin, bury Ford's web. Night fell, the motel's neon a sickly pulse, Solomon pacing, cane scraping linoleum. He replayed the texts, hail to Ford and Chicago's done. Warwick's wire, 10 million for control. He'd judged cases, seen power hide, but this was a beast. Racism not just Ford's, but a country's. Lila's blood, its ink, the TV flickered, protests live, crowds roaring in D.C. Solomon's face a beacon, not a thug. He smiled, rare, real, thinking the chip had cracked Ford's shield. Clara's DOJ closing in, Lila's cell door swinging open. He'd lost her twice, Pier, Barn. Lost Lena, Marcus, his name, but now held a spear, its tip national, sharp enough to pierce the Hydra's heart. A blast shook Joliet, screams piercing the motel's walls as X lit up. Chicago rally bombed. 30 dead, signs scorched. Justice for Solomon buried in smoke. Windy Truth pounced. Carter's terror hits home. His face tied to the blast. No militia, no Ford, just him, a fugitive kingpin. Solomon's gut twisted, the chip heavy, its truth drowned by blood. Protesters fled, X flipped, he's a monster. Trolls crowing, Lila's spark gone. Clara called, voice shaking. Ford's cabal framed you for treason, Solomon. DOJ's. Stalled, Hale's got pull. They're saying you leaked Supreme Court secrets, bombed your own. Solomon's cane snapped, wood splintering, rage swallowing pain. He'd sent the chip, believed its salvation, only to spark a slaughter. Lila still caged, Marcus lost. His name, a traitor's. The motel's lamp flickered, shadows clawing as Solomon sat, breath ragged, blood flaking onto the floor. The bombing wasn't random. Ford's militia, Hale's nod, a racist fist to crush the protests, pin it on him. He'd hacked their secrets, trusted Clara's reach, stormed a barn for Lila, and now stood accused of treason, a crime heavier than Holt's charge, Windy Truth's lies, the barn's flames. The chip's texts glowed, a lifeline or a noose, tying Ford to Hale, Warwick, a hydra he'd only grazed. He pictured Lila's cell, her scarred arm, her fire. Ford thought this broke him, that bombs, treason, hate would silence a judge's fight. He'd misjudged. Solomon's core was war, every blow sharpening it. He stood, cane gone, leg buckling, and scanned the motel's grime, spotting a camera outside, its lens a faint hope. Maybe it caught a face, a van, a crack in Ford's lie. He memorized its tilt, mind filing like court briefs, 30 years judging power's rot. The bombing killed innocence, framed him, but Lila lived, Clara fought, and the chip's truth lingered, a spark in DC's dark. He dialed Clara again, voice a blade. Push harder, he said, hanging up, the motel a bunker now, not a tomb. Ford's cabal was vast, senators, judges, death. But Solomon was a judge, Lila's kin, and he'd tear their web apart. Find her, end this, no matter the traitor's brand. Solomon Carter crouched in the shadows of a Cicero factory. 10 miles from Joliet's grim motel, his 74-year-old body a wreck of pain. Blood matted his brow, a militia's kicks joining Voss's baton scars, his ribs cracked from the Barnes drone strike that stole Lila again. The chip's texts, Ford's cabal of senators, judges, cops, had promised salvation, but a bombed Chicago rally, 30 dead, pinned him as a traitor, Windy Truth screaming, Carter's terror. Lila, 22, was caged somewhere, her scarred arm a ghost in his mind. Marcus Tate lost to terrorist cuffs, Judge Vernon Holt's felony a noose. The factory's steel hummed, rusted pipes dripping, a hideout scavenged by a protester's tip. Solomon gripped a splintered cane, silver hair dull, and wondered if Ford's hate could choke even a judge's heart. Cicero's industrial sprawl clanged outside, a wasteland of smokestacks far from Pilson's murals, Joliet's ashes. Solomon had fled the motel, dodging Ford's treason frame. Clara Hensley's DOJ stalled by Senator Hale's pull. The chip, sent to her, exposed a racist hydra. Hale, Judge Warwick, Ford, targeting black leaders, Chicago attest, Lila's blood its proof. Her kidnapping, Dana's betrayal, the sniper-trapped march, all Ford's war for Solomon's call, a Supreme Court spark that burned his kin. His leg throbbed, drone shrapnel embedded, but his mind stayed razor-sharp, tracing a militia signal hacked from the burner phone's chip. Lila was here, the signal swore, and he'd tear this factory apart to find her, end Ford's reign no matter the traitor's brand. Dawn crept, grey light seeping through cracked skylights, the factory's floor littered with bolts, oil stains. Solomon limped past vats, cane tapping, his breath shallow to dodge pain. He'd rescued Lila once, held her in that barn, only to lose her to Ford's drone, Lena's blood on his hands, Windy Truth's lies, terrorist, a city's curse. Yet her ex-fire, justice for Solomon, flickered in protests nationwide, a pulse he clung to. He hacked a guard's radio, static crackling. Girls in the East Wing, bound. His heart surged, picturing Lila's braids, her singer's grit. Scarred but alive. He'd trusted Dana, lost her, trusted Lena, buried her. Now with nothing but a cane and a signal, he'd save Lila, gut Ford, crack the cabal's spine. He moved shadow to shadow, cane silent, avoiding militia patrols. Ford's off-duty dogs, rifles slung, slurs muttered. A stairwell loomed, rusted, leading east, and Solomon climbed, his legs screaming, blood seeping through his coat. The East Wing was a maze, crates, chains, a flickering screen showing X, his face a traitor's mask, no mention of Ford's bomb. Lila sat in a corner, ropes binding her wrists, blood crusting her temple, her leather jacket slashed. "Grandpa," she gasped, eyes fierce despite pain, and Solomon cut her ropes, his cane trembling, ribs cracking with effort. She stood, wincing, arm scarred with Ford's hate, but her grip was steel, Singer's fire unbowed. He believed it, freedom, justice, Ford's fall, hers to sing again. They crept toward an exit, Lila's steps shaky, Solomon's cane scraping, the factory's hum a heartbeat. He pictured Marcus freed, Clara's DOJ moving, Windy Truth silenced, their hacked chip burning Hale's web. The exit gleamed, a steel door 10 feet away, and Solomon's chest heaved, hope blazing. He'd saved her twice, defied Ford's drone, and now they'd run, expose the cabal, end this war. Lila squeezed his hand, her bloodied arm a vow, and he smiled, rare, real, thinking the factory was theirs, Ford's militia blind, Chicago waking. He doubted after the bombing, thought Hale untouchable, but Lila's pulse proved him wrong. Justice was theirs, a spark to ignite. A spotlight flared, blinding as Ford's voice boomed, a live stream crackling from every screen. Factory X, Chicago's heir. Ezekiel Carter, traitor, he snarled, his face looming, militia swarming, rifles raised, Lila and Solomon pinned. Ropes snapped back, binding them, a noose slung around Lila's neck, her gasp a knife in Solomon's gut. Ford stepped from shadows, grey eyes cold, captain's badge gleaming, backed by cabal agents. Suits, not cops. Hale's men. "Confess to treason," Ford said. stream rolling, millions watching, or she hangs. The noose tightened, Lila choking, her scarred, arm bleeding anew, slurs glowing on screens, X erupting. Her Carter dies trending, hate cheering. Solomon spat blood, Kane lost, roaring, "You're nothing!" But a sniper's shot cracked, tearing his leg, bones splintering, pain white-hot. Solomon collapsed, blood pooling, Lila's noose swaying, her eyes defiant despite Ford's knife. At her throat, the stream spiked, trolls gloating, "Hang them!" Protests raging in Chicago, D.C., kettled by riot cops, shields gleaming, gas hissing. Solomon's mind swam, picturing Clara, Marcus, the chip. Truth buried by this stage, Ford's cabal playing God. He'd hacked their secrets, rescued Lila, believed her free, only to face this, a public gallows, racist hate live for millions, Lila's life the price. His leg gushed, vision fading, but he locked eyes with her fire his anchor. Ford smirked, stream soaring, thinking confession would break them, erase their fight, crown his hydra. He'd misjudged. Solomon's core was war, Lila's too, and every blow forged it sharper. The factory's steel groaned, militia circling, cabal agents filming, their suits crisp, Hale's shadow vast. Solomon's fingers twitched, brushing an earpiece he'd rigged in Joliet, a hacker's trick uncaught. It hummed, faint. A lifeline to Clara, maybe X, proof he wasn't done. He'd stood for Lila, marched for her, stormed this hell, and now faced Ford's noose. Windy Truth's lies a global roar, traitor, bomber, thug. Yet Lila's choke, her blood lit his vow. Save her, gut Ford, burn Hale's web. The sniper's barrel glinted, Ford's knife flashed, but Solomon breathed, earpiece warm, resolve a steel vow. They'd caged his kin, framed a judge, bombed a city, but he'd fight noose or not for Lila, for justice, for the spark that refused to die. Solomon Carter bled out on the Cicero factory floor, his 74-year-old body crumpled, a sniper's bullet shredding his leg, bones splintered, pain a white-hot roar. Ropes bound his wrists, blood pooling under his tattered coat. The gash. From Voss's bat on a ghost beside fresh militia bruises. Lila, 22, hung beside him, a noose choking her neck, her scarred arm dripping red, eyes fierce despite Ford's knife at her throat. The factory's screens blared a live stream. Captain Ellis Ford's voice snarling, "Confess, traitor." Millions watching, X screaming, "Ammon Carter dies." Judge Vernon Holt's felony, Windy Truth's lies, terrorist, bomber, had led here. Marcus Tate cuffed, Clara Hensley's DOJ stalled by a cabal, Senator Hale, Judge Warwick, exposed by Solomon's chip. Steel beams groaned, militia circling, but an earpiece hummed, rigged in Joliet, a spark in his haze. Could it burn Ford's empire before the noose claimed Lila? The factory's air was thick, oil and rust stinging Solomon's lungs, 10 miles from Joliet's motel, a world from his lost Hyde Park books. Ford stood tall, grey eyes glinting, badge a racist crown, cabal agents, suits cold filming for Hale's Hydra, their stream a gallows for black defiance. Lila's gasp cut Solomon's core, her singer's fire choking, slurs glowing on screens. X-trolls cheering, "Hang them." He'd called Clara, sparked this war, lost Lena to a drone, Marcus to cuffs, Lila twice, Pier, barn, yet her pulse, her blood, anchored him. The chip's texts, Ford to Hale, 10 million wired, had promised truth, but Ford's bombing, 30 dead, framed Solomon traitor, crushing protests, caging Lila. His leg gushed, vision blurring, but the earpiece pulsed, a hacker's trick. Maybe enough to flip this execution. Ford leaned in, knife grazing Lila's neck, his drawl venomous. "Confess, Carter, or she's gone." The stream spiked, millions glued, Chicago's riot cops kettling crowds, gas hissing outside. Solomon spat blood, voice a blade. "You're the traitor, Ford." The captain's smirk faltered, militia shifting, rifles clanking, but the noose tightened, Lila's choke louder, her braids swaying. Solomon's fingers twitched, earpiece warm, its signal live, hacked in Joliet, linked to X, maybe Clara's DOJ. He'd stood for Lila, marched, hacked, stormed barns, and now faced this racist stage. Ford's cabal betting confession would bury them. They'd misjudged. His fight was breath, Lila's too, and he'd burn their lie with their own stream. He whispered, lips cracked, voice low to mask it. Now. The earpiece buzzed, his hack kicking in, hijacking Ford's stream, screens flickering as texts loaded. Ford to Hale, Chicago's ours. Warwick's payoff. Carter's done. X erupted, millions seeing truth. Ford's cabal, racist payoffs, not Solomon's treason. Comments flipped. Ford's the traitor. Justice for Solomon roaring back, protests surging past shields. Solomon's heart pounded, blood soaking concrete. Lila's noose still tight, her eyes blazing, sensing the shift. Ford froze, face paling, as cabal agents cursed, suits scrambling, their stream a mirror of guilt. Solomon grinned, pain fading, knowing Clara watched. DOJ waking. Chicago's crowds breaking free, their fists are tied against Ford's gas. The factory shook, protesters smashing gates, their chant, Solomon lives, rattling beams, sirens screaming. Not for Ford, but against him. Lila kicked, loosening her noose, her scarred arm bleeding but strong, lips gasping. We did it. Solomon strained, ropes cutting, picturing Marcus, Clara, the chip's spark. Truth live, Hale's web cracking. He'd hacked Ford's accounts, lost Lila, found her, lost her again. But this stream, his voice was checkmate. Militia panicked, rifles dropping as Ford roared, face red, knife slashing air. You're dead, he bellowed, lunging at Solomon. But a protester's brick flew, cracking a screen, chaos swallowing his aim. Solomon rolled, ropes fraying, blood slick, and saw Lila twist free, her noose falling, her boot slamming a guard's knee. Ford spun, desperate, and fired a pistol, the bullet tearing Solomon's chest, a dull thud stealing breath, pain blackening his sight. He slumped, factory spinning, Lila's scream distant, blood flooding his coat, his cracked ribs nothing to this hole. Militia fled, protesters flooding in, their fists toppling guards, cabal agents vanishing into smoke. Lila dropped beside Solomon, hands pressing his wound, blood seeping through her fingers, her braids brushing his face. Stay with me, she choked, scarred arm trembling, singer's fire now a plea. Solomon gasped, earpiece dead, but X alive. Ford falls trending, Hale named, truth global. He'd stood, fought, bled, and won this Lila free, Ford's empire dust. But his pulse faded, chest heavy, Clara's voice a ghost. Sirens blared, SWAT storming, not Ford's but Clara's, tipped by the stream, rifles raised, cuffing Ford. His badge clattering, face ash as agents dragged him out. A cabal suit tripped, Warwick's name slipping, Hale's shadow shrinking, their hydra gutted by Solomon's hack. Protesters cheered, carrying Lila, her bloodied hands clutching Solomon. Medics rushing, their kits useless against his chest's gush. The factory's screens looped the texts, Ford's guilt live, windy truth silent, X a storm. Solomon lives, justice now. Solomon's eyes fluttered, Lila's face fading, her fire his last light. He'd called Clara, sparked war, lost home, kin, name, but gave them truth, a city's roar, Hale's web torn. Was it enough? Medics lifted him, Lila running beside, her voice breaking. You did it, Grandpa. SWAT cleared the floor, militia cuffed, Ford's pistol bagged, his stream a noose for himself. Solomon's breath hitched, blood choking, but he saw Chicago's skyline through a skylight, protests alive, not kettled, Lila's arm scarred but free. He'd hacked for her, bled for her, stood for her, and now lay, chest torn, factory a tomb or triumph. Clara's DOJ would move, Marcus walk, Holt's charge dust, but his pulse slowed, Lila's hand warm, her fire carrying his fight. The stream had flipped. Ford's cabal cracked, and Solomon, judge, grandfather, warrior, clung to that spark, fading but fierce as medics fought to hold him. Solomon Carter woke to the sterile hum of a Chicago hospital, his 74-year-old body a patchwork of bandages, pain a dull throb in his chest where Ford's bullet had torn flesh. Tubes snaked from his arm, monitors beeping, the air sharp, with antiseptic. His silver hair lay matted, brow scarred from Voss's baton, leg splintered from a sniper's shot, ribs cracked from a drone's blast. Lila, 22, sat beside him, her braids loose, her arm scarred with malicious slurs, but her eyes fierce, Singer's fire unbowed. Captain Ellis Ford was cuffed, his precinct gutted, the Cicero factory stream hacked by Solomon's earpiece, exposing his cabal to millions, Senator Hale and Judge Warwick named, their racist empire cracked. Windy Truth's lies, traitor, bomber, had crumbled, Marcus Tate freed, Judge Vernon Holt's felony charge dust. Had Solomon's war finally won justice? The hospital room glowed, sunlight spilling through blinds, a far cry from Pilson's warehouse, Joliet's motel, Cicero's noose. Solomon's breath was shallow, chest stitched, but his mind stayed sharp, replaying the factory. Lila's choke, Ford's knife, his hack flipping the stream, texts blazing Ford to Hale, 10 million wired. Protesters had stormed, SWAT cuffed. Ford Clara Hensley's DOJ moving, X erupting. Solomon lives, Ford falls. Lila's hand gripped his, her leather jacket draped on a chair, bloodstains faded but real. "You're here," she said, voice cracking, pride drowning pain. Solomon nodded, lips dry, picturing Marcus sprung from terrorist cuffs. His lawyers grinned back, Chicago's streets alive with reform chants, not gas. His call to Clara, a spark from a South Loop bar, had burned a hydra, saved his kin, maybe more. Days blurred, nurses bustling, monitors steady, Solomon's strength creeping back, a judge's resolve unbroken by Ford's bullet. Lila scrolled X, showing him posts, thousands rallying Atlanta to Oakland, backed justice for Solomon, a global cry. Chicago's mayor resigned, Ford's precinct gutted, new boards sworn, body cams mandated, Solomon's name etched in their laws. News ran non-stop, Hale dodging cameras, Warwick's bench empty. DOJ probe spreading to D.C., L.A. Marcus visited, suit crisp, clapping Solomon's shoulder. "How you broke them, brother," he said, voice thick. "Lila's clear, my record's clean, Holt's done." Solomon exhaled, chest aching, but warmth spread. 3 decades judging, he'd seen systems bend, never break like this. The hospital bed wasn't a grave. It was a throne, his war's trophy. Lila stayed close, her guitar gone but her voice humming, soft hymns filling the room, Esther's favorites, Solomon's late wife, a ghost in their notes. He pictured her pride, his Hyde Park books, now ashes. Replaced by this, a city reshaped, Lila's fire carrying his fight. Protests swelled, signs sharp. Reform now, Solomon's justice, cameras rolling, X a storm, no trolls left to drown it. Clara called, her Supreme Court tones steel. "Ford's life, no parole," she said, papers rustling. "Hale's indicted. Warwick, too. You've changed everything." Solomon's lips twitched, a smile, rare, real, believing it, his cane lost. Home burned, body torn, but Chicago's pulse was his, Lila's, a nation's racism's roots exposed, not buried. The hospital buzzed, nurses swapping shifts, a TV looping Ford's cuffs, his badge bagged, Hale's mansion raided. Solomon sat, up wincing, Lila helping, her scarred armor badge, not shame. He'd stood outside that bar, proud, beaten for it, cuffed, smeared, bombed, shot, yet lived. Lila too, Marcus free, the cabal cracking. Plaques piled in, city council, NAACP, a law school naming a wing, his name no longer Windy Truths. Thug but a beacon, judge, warrior. He gripped Lila's hand, chest stitched but heart full, thinking this was justice, fragile but fierce, a mountain climbed, its peak his to hold. The monitors beeped, steady, and he breathed, war won. Ford's noose a memory, Hale's web torn, Lila's fire the future. Night fell, the hospital quiet, Lila dozing in her chair, her breath a soft rhythm. Solomon stared at the ceiling, pain, dull, replaying the stream. Ford's snarl, Lila's choke, his hack spark. He'd called Clara, sparked war, lost Lena, Dana's trust, nearly Lila, but gave Chicago truth, a hydra's wound, reform's seed. His chest warmed, a judge's pride, 30 years bending law, now breaking hate's spine. He shifted, tubes, tugging, and saw Lila's phone left open, X-posts glowing, students marching, pastors preaching, his name a vow. The war wasn't over, Hale's cuffs weren't enough, but it was theirs. Lila's to sing, Marcus's to fight, his to guide. He closed his eyes, peace settling, a rare calm after Ford's storm. Lila stirred, waking, her eyes catching moonlight, and grabbed her phone, frowning. "Grandpa," she whispered, voice tight, swiping to a file, encrypted, buried in Ford's seized laptop, sent by a DOJ leak. She opened it, screen casting shadows, and Solomon leaned in, pain spiking but ignored, as codes flashed. Names, dates, not Hale's, not Warwick's, but a retired senator, Ellison Price, untouchable, funding, the cabal to crush black leaders, Chicago a pawn in his chess. The file hinted Solomon was still a target, Price's accounts active, a shadow beyond Hale's reach, Ford's fall a decoy. Solomon's gut twisted, peace shattering, his stitched chest pounding, monitors spiking as nurses rushed in. The file glowed Price's photo, 70 white eyes like flint, a DC kingpin no probe had touched. Solomon's breath hitched, picturing Lila's scars, Ford's noose, the bombed rally, Price's hand, not Hale's, pulling strings, racism's root deeper than Chicago's streets. He'd believed Ford's cuffs, Hale's fall, were victory. Plaque's proof of justice won. Now Price loomed, a hydra's head uncut, his wealth a blade to hunt Solomon, Lila, any black voice rising. Lila's hand shook, phone trembling, but her jaw set, Singer's fire meeting his judge's steel. "We're not done," she said, echoing his South Loop vow. And Solomon nodded, pain a fuel, resolve a vow to fight, noose or bullet be damned. He stood, nurses shouting, tubes snapping free, his splinted leg buckling but holding. Kane reclaimed its wood a scepter. The hospital's hum was war's drum, Chicago's skyline glinting beyond, protests alive, not caged. Price watched from DC, the file warned, his shadow a storm, Solomon's name his next mark. He'd called Clara, burned Ford, cracked Hale, thought it enough, but this was bigger. Racism's king, untouchable, daring him to rise. Lila packed her phone, jacket on, her scars a map of their fight, and Solomon limped to the door, monitors silent, nurses stunned. He'd bled for justice, nearly died, won a city. But Price waited, a war beyond Ford's, and Solomon would face it, Kane high, Lila's fire his own, a judge unbowed. The hallway stretched, fluorescent, Chicago's pulse outside, reform chants. Faint but fierce, Solomon gripped Lila's arm, her warmth his anchor, and saw Price's shadow, not here but everywhere. Courts, senates, streets, racism's route he'd only grazed. He'd stood for Lila, hacked for her, bled for her, and now stood again, chest-stitched, leg torn but alive, wore his breath. The file was a blade, Price's name a target, and Solomon vowed to hunt him, gut him, end this for Lila, Marcus, Chicago, every life Ford's cabal crushed. He stepped into the night, Kane tapping, Lila's fire blazing, Price's storm ahead, justice theirs to carve, no matter the cost. Solomon Carter's saga unveils raw truths about resilience, systemic racism, and the fight for justice. His battle, sparked by a racist arrest and fueled by a Supreme Court call, teaches that standing against oppression demands unyielding courage, even when it wears badges or robes. From Voss's batons to Ford's noose, Solomon faced relentless blows, each laced with racist hate, yet never broke, showing strength lies in enduring pain and striking smarter. His hacked stream, exposing a cabal, proves one voice can ignite change, but only with others, Lila's fire, Marcus's grit, Clara's pull, amplifying it. Systemic racism isn't just rogue cops, it's a hydra, senators, judges, militias, striking, from shadows when threatened, as Price's shadow showed. Solomon's victories, Ford's cuffs, Chicago's reforms, cost blood, Lila's scars, Lena's life, teaching that justice is fragile, won through sacrifice, not promises. Price's reveal warns vigilance, racism's roots run deep, demanding constant fight. Solomon risked all, home, kin, breath, for a city, a nation, proving progress is carved, not given. His lesson echoes, fight like Solomon, relentless, united, because silence feeds the beast. Where do you see this struggle today? Comment number 1 if you face systemic bias. Number 2, if collective action fuels your hope, then like, subscribe, share to keep this fire alive. Thank you for joining. Solomon's Stand. Here's to courage, justice, a world unshackled.